the Saints are in the market for a quarterback in 2026. Welcome in. It's the Breer Report for August the 27th. We are now 8 days away from the first game of the NFL season. That, of course, will be the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles on NBC. Can't wait for the season to start. I've been to 26 teams now. I'm ready for real games to begin, but we do have some pieces of business that'll be done over the next few days. Of course, yesterday was the cut down, so all teams are down to 53 players now. What'll happen today, and this is sort of an interesting part of the process, at noon, you'll have your waiver claims come in. And at that point, teams can start to put together their practice squads. So there's a lot of roster churning still to come over the next couple of days. And some of the teams at the top of the waiver order will take advantage of that. I'd expect the Titans, for one, to be pretty active. They could wind up claiming a handful of players today to augment their roster. Obviously, there's a remade front office there. So lots of things that are still happening heading into the Labor Day weekend. But we have three topics that we want to recap coming out of the last couple of days. And the first topic is the last starting quarterback job to be filled. That is the one in New Orleans. Spencer Rattler has beat out Tyler Shuck for the starting quarterback job there. And I think the easy way to look at this is the Saints are in the market for a quarterback in 2026. And that's no shot at Spencer Rattler, who has a chance now to win that job long term. If he comes out and surprises everybody, then maybe we're talking about this differently in 2 or 3 months. It's not over for Tyler Shuck either, although as a guy who spent 7 years in college, and no, I didn't misspeak there, he spent 7 years in college. He should be somebody who's more ready to go than a guy who was in college for 3 or 4 years. So, I think at this point, if you're the Saints, you have a good idea of what Spencer Rattler is. You had him in the building last year. And the fact that Tyler Shuck couldn't beat him out at least creates the likelihood going forward that you're going to be in the market for a quarterback in the first round of the 2026 draft. And of course, there are a couple of names that are at least draft eligible. And I'm not going to say likely to be in the draft, but at least draft eligible that have connections to the organization. The first one's the most obvious one, the guy who I don't think will be in the 2026 draft, and that's Arch Manning. He is now the full-time starter at Texas. He's started 2 games in his career. We've been over the family history before. I just don't think that he's going to wind up declaring for the draft based on his family history, based on the way Cooper Manning, his dad, has handled his development, based on the way that his uncles handled their own process. Both those guys exhausted their college eligibility. And I'm not saying Arch Manning will exhaust his college eligibility, because that would actually mean that he'd be in the 2028 draft, not the 26 or 27 draft. But I look at this and I see a kid who obviously showed a lot of promise in high school, was the number 1 recruit in the country, went to a place where there was a established starting quarterback in Quinn Ewers, waited 2 years, didn't transfer. Everything about his process has been old school. So the idea that he would come in and just be a single season starter doesn't make much sense on the face of it. And there's also the role in someone's development that your experience plays. And a lot of smart quarterback people have put the threshold at 25 starts. Like, you should have 25 starts under your belt at the college level before you're really ready for the pro level. For Arch Manning to get to that point, to that 25 start threshold, he would have to play not only through the 2025 season, but also through the 2026 season at the University of Texas. So right now, my educated guess is Arch Manning won't be in the 26 draft. However, there is a very strong connection, of course, between the city of New Orleans and the Manning family. Obviously, Arch Manning's grandfather, Archie Manning, is a legend in the Saints organization. So maybe if the Saints had the number 1 pick and Arch plays that well, it'd be enticing for him to come. If he does not come out, there's another player who I'm almost certain will be in next year's draft that plays that position, that has a chance to go in the first round, that has a connection to the organization. And that's Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback at LSU. His dad, Doug, is the offensive coordinator with the Saints. So with Nussmeier in the draft, with Manning being draft eligible, if the Saints don't get off to a great start in Kellen Moore's first year, you can expect the talk to continue to ramp up, and for good reason. Again, it doesn't look like they have the answer on the roster. That said, this is a good situation for a young quarterback. And I know a lot of people look at them and say, this might be the worst team in the league because people are so fixated on the quarterback. But I don't think this is a bad situation for a young quarterback. They have 4 first-round picks starting on their offensive line, and the 5th piece was a top 50 pick. So they have guys at every position who are highly drafted in Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy, Trevor Penning moving inside to guard, and then Kelvin Banks, their first-round pick at left tackle, and then a guy who played great at left tackle who's moving to right tackle this year in Talis Fuaga. Very solid offensive line. You still have Alvin Kamara there. You have Chris Olave. If he can stay healthy, I still think he's got a chance to be a really good NFL receiver. I still believe in him. You have pieces there. You have an offensive line there. You have the ability to run the ball there. I think for a young quarterback now, it's a good situation. So you're going to be able to get a clear read on both Spencer Rattler, and I'd assume Tyler Shuck's going to play at some point this year. And I think you're also going to be able to present a great situation for a young quarterback in 2026. Again, presuming that either Rattler or Shuck isn't the answer, and that answer could come for them in the first round of the 2026 draft. All right. Our second topic for today, the Texans running back situation. Joe Mixon played great last year. I questioned the move for Joe Mixon in 2024. It turned out great. He was still one of the best running backs in football last year. And now, we're seeing where some of the concern that I and other people had about acquiring him in 2024 is coming into play, which is he's older. Now he's got this ankle foot thing he's dealing with that's been a little bit mysterious. The Texans were sort of coy about it through camp. Now he lands on the PUP list, which means he's out for at least the first month of the season. And this could be a problem because if you look at their depth chart at the running back position, you've got Nick Chubb, who, again, looked pretty good in camp. You can still see that his mind for the game is really sharp and the way he sets up his blocks and how efficient he runs. So that part's still there. But can he make it through a season based on all of his injury history? And then you have Dameon Pierce, who they were really excited about a couple of years ago, but for one reason or another has not become the player that they thought he was going to be when he was a rookie. And so do you have enough at that position? And it's significant too, because their running game is going to be really important as they try to get their offensive line set. And so Cam Robinson's been on the block. Trent Brown was released. And you've got Ariante Ursary at the left tackle spot, the rookie from Minnesota. Can you trust him over there? He's very talented. Ursari's very, very talented. But he is a rookie. So what does that look like? How does the rest of your line shake out? And if you are managing a line issue early in the year, what you want to be able to do is run the ball effectively and trust your running backs. Again, can Chubb keep answering the bell the longer Mixon is out? I look at so much of what I see in Houston, and I like it. C.J. Stroud, I think, still has a chance to be a top 5 quarterback in the league. He's thrown in Nico Collins, a true number one. The 2 rookie receivers they have, Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, both those guys hit the ground running. Great football IQ with both those guys. They look like they're going to be players right out of the box. You still have Christian Kirk there. We'll see if you get anything from Tank Dell this year. Reliable tight end in Dalton Schultz. And then one of the best defenses in football with Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter coming off the edges. And then the corner spots almost as strong with maybe the best corner in football, not one of the 2 or 3 best corners in football, and Derek Stingley on one side, and Kamari Lassiter, who they think can be almost as good on the other side. So you've got great defense. You've got great targets in the passing game. You've got a really, really good young quarterback. Can the offensive line and now the running back position be what you need it to be? That's the big question. And so I think having Mixon in there because of how strong a runner he is, how he can create on his own a little bit, would have helped you solve your line issue because maybe he doesn't need quite as much up front to happen for him. That gets you in 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 2 a little bit more often. So you're not managing as much from an offensive line standpoint with what the defense can throw at you. So this is obviously one worth monitoring, and I think an important one in the AFC South and in the AFC in general, because I do think the Texans have the ceiling to knock on that glass ceiling up there in the AFC and get into that tier that Kansas City and Baltimore and Buffalo have been in. Finally, our third takeaway is the lingering contract situations. Trey Hendrickson goes from $16 million to $29 million. gets a $1 million incentive if he plays 60% of the snaps, and the Bengals make the playoffs. So you have Trey Hendrickson taken care of now. The compromise there being that they didn't want to guarantee future years. So the player was able to get it where the team doesn't have the sort of control with non-guaranteed years in the future. So that's a good deal for Trey Hendrickson, that he'll either be playing on a nearly $40 million franchise tag next year or be a free agent. And then in the case of Terry McLaurin, you find your middle ground. Again, you can see the compromise on paper. The team goes to 32, not 33, where DK Metcalf was on an APY basis on the average per year. And then the player gets a 3-year deal rather than a 4-year deal. So the team gives up a year of control there. That's an everybody wins situation. And to me, like, that was always going to get done. I don't think Terry ever wanted to leave Washington, despite the trade request. I don't think that, in this situation, Dan Quinn ever even entertained the idea of not having Terry McLaurin on the team. So McLaurin is a Commander. So Trey Hendrickson is a Bengal. I think Micah Parsons will still be a Cowboy. We'll see what happens over the course of the next few days. Again, 8 days until the Cowboys open, because they're in that Thursday night game. But globally, I mean, one thing to remember, and I know we say this every summer, these things generally get done. And unfortunately for fans of the teams, you have to go through some of this pain to get there. All right, the trade request, the back and forth. I'm not playing there anymore. All of that different stuff. There's a lot of water carrying in the media, if we're being honest about it, right? Like, where people are talking about things as if they're realistic when they really aren't. Like the idea that this guy's going to be traded to this team, or this guy's never going to play for this team again, or this holdout could go into October. Most of it's nonsense. In most cases, these things just need a deadline. The deadline for these guys was the start of the season. So now Hendrickson's done and McLaurin's done. And we'll see on Parsons. That one's gotten pretty nasty. So we'll see if they can reel that one back in. But again, even with Parsons, the pacing on these talks isn't much different than the pacing on the talks with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott last year, or even Zach Martin the year before that. Appreciate you guys coming out. We're going to get into our regular season cadence here in the next couple of weeks. That means a couple of Breer reports a week, plus a mailbag. We will have a mailbag coming for you on Thursday. Hope to see all of you then.